So, as Ben said, I'm certainly not 50 years old, obviously. We are celebrating our 50th anniversary at Anza Borrego Foundation this year. My name is Ashley. I'm the Education and Outreach Coordinator. I've been with Anza Borrego Foundation for 3 years now, and I absolutely love it. Never been to a desert before I moved down there and started my job there. And you know, if you haven't been to the desert before, be forewarned that the first time you go, you might like it a little bit, and then the second time you go, you'll probably like it a lot, and then you'll probably find yourself going back over and over and over again, because it really gets in you, and it's a really beautiful spot. Which is why Anza Borrego Foundation has been around for 50 years. So we do everything from land acquisition to adult education programs to our 5th grade environmental education program that we just finished with. We help support the park. We hire a seasonal person at State Park Visitor Center. We do all sorts of things. And if you have any questions about that, please feel free to let me know. I don't have my name tag on tonight, so I think people are a little slacking. I didn't know what to write on it because Ben hadn't announced me yet. Founder of ABF. But I'll be over here all night, not all night, but until they kick me out. And I'll be there to answer questions on anything that you have about the park or Anza Borrego Foundation in particular. So without further ado, I would like to introduce my friend Scott. I am lucky enough that not only have I worked with Scott professionally, he leads some hikes for ABF, but I've also gotten a chance to hike with him while he's doing some of his field work for this book that he wrote, which is awesome. So Scott, as Ben mentioned, is the co-author of the 5th edition of Afoot and Afield in San Diego County, which, as many of you know, is sort of the hiking Bible of this area. And he's an avid hiker. He takes beautiful photographs, partly because he goes amazing places, partly because he has a good eye for it. He writes for Modern Hiker in the Southern California section of the Modern Hiker website, which is great. If you haven't used that as a resource for hikes, I definitely recommend it. He's also, I hope you don't mind if I say this, he's a brand new dad with a very cute little bundle of joy.
Little? 13 and a half.
Joy. But we're really excited that he took the time out of his day to come talk to you specifically about desert hiking. We love the desert. We hope you love the desert and come out and explore it with us. I'll give you a little tip. Don't get mad at me if it's not exactly right, okay? With the rain that we had and the heat that's expected this weekend, we are estimating approximately midweek for about a week. So approximately Wednesday to Wednesday. What we're looking at, no promises, don't get angry if it's not exactly right. We can't ever really predict Mother Nature, but if you're looking to see some flowers, that's at this point kind of what we're recommending. So I'm gonna actually take a really quick selfie. This is our last one for this season. So I'm gonna have Scott maybe go over there really quick. We're gonna do a nice big group selfie. If we can make this happen, it's gonna be amazing. Just wait for it, guys. Wait, that was like projector. Wait, let's go over here. Here we go. Okay, this will totally work. Wait for it. Are you guys smiling? I can't tell if you're smiling. Are you ready? Smiles and happiness, unicorns and rainbows. Nice. Okay, without further ado, Scott Turner. Thanks, guys.
So, thank you, Ashley. You didn't say anything about the key lime pie. I'm going to disappoint.
I didn't. I thought I'd leave that up to you for your introduction.
Yeah. So this entire presentation is about key lime pie and about how much I love it. First of all, I just want to say thank you to Ashley for inviting me to do this. She's been a huge, a lot of fun and a huge resource. You've connected me with a lot of great people, and you're a big part in actually making this book happen. So thank you to you. Thank you for inviting me. I also want to thank John and Adventure 16 for hosting this. Also, of course, I got my second water bottle, so thrilled. I'm really looking forward to getting the third one in a month, so thank you. And of course, I want to thank all of you for coming out here on a school night. I know most of you probably have to go back to work. I'm looking forward to getting up at 5 o'clock tomorrow so I can do my job. But it all works out because I get to talk about one of my favorite things, which is the desert. So just to give you an idea, the thrust of this presentation is to talk about, first, what's out there, because if you stand on a peak up in the Laguna Mountains, you look out and you see just this big, huge field of beige with some peaks, and a little hard to tell what's going on out there. Turns out the desert is really good at hiding its secrets, and it's not going to give it up for free. So we're going to talk a little bit about, first of all, what's out there. But you know, one of the things I've encountered after several years of doing this, people have a lot of misgivings about the desert. It's an intimidating place for many people for a lot of different reasons. My experience has been that many of those reasons were somewhat inflated by my own fears. I was going to have a rock trapped on my arm and I was going to have to cut through with my leather belt. You know, that sort of thing. That's one of the biggest barriers, and I'm actually here to talk about that specifically because you guys got to see this stuff. If you're here, I'm guessing you're here because you're interested in the desert. Just a little brief bit of our audience participation, just so I know like where you guys are coming from. Who's been out there before? Almost everybody. So who has spent a lot of time out there? Who's done something stupid that they look back and think, man, I really shouldn't have done that? Okay, all right. And who feels a little bit intimidated, like you're not so sure this is such a good idea? One person, come on. Okay, there's no shame in that. When I first started hiking out there, I was scared out of my mind. Of course, I'm a bit of an idiot, so I went and tried one of the hardest hikes I could think of, which was Whale Peak. I tried it right after a snowstorm, so I almost took a face plant into a cholla, which was great. I got lost several times, and if you know Whale Peak at all, you know that's not a good place to get lost. What I heard, did I hear and I love it?
I love Whale Peak.
I love it too. I love it too, all things considered. I mean, I've gone up there a couple times now, and you know, despite the fact that I almost took a face with a cactus. So, my initial thoughts about it were, I'm scared to death of this place. Even looking into Afoot and Afield, I couldn't get through those last few chapters because I'm like, what, 20 miles with 8,300 feet again? You've got to be kidding me. There's 3,000 feet of climbing in 1 mile. What are you talking about? I mean, that's a real thing. I mean, that's like this right here. This is the Santa Rosa Mountains, and that's where all that crazy stuff happens. So, again, going to kind of go through this to try to give you an idea of what's out there and how to kind of get over some of those barriers. So the desert experience, I mean, you're going to get a lot of things out of the desert. One of the things that I find the most appealing is the silence. Who's ever been out there on a night where there's no wind? So do you remember that feeling where it was almost so loud that it was like, I can't take this, it's too loud. The value of something like that for us living where we live today and going through what we go through in a daily life, we can't underestimate that. This is probably an experience for almost all of us on a daily basis, this kind of noise, this kind of crowding. Getting away from that, I mean, okay, so full disclosure, I'm also a marriage and family therapist, so I'm in the business of trying to make people happy, or at least not sad. And this sort of thing, the stress levels, what this does to our cortisol levels and our stress levels, it drives it through the roof. So to be able to have this kind of silence contrasted with that is an incredibly valuable thing. Getting away from it all, especially in a metropolis that's got, I don't know, how many people are in San Diego? 3.5 many, yeah. So, a lot of people, right? So, I mean, even just sticking around town, I'm going to bag on Mount Woodson a lot, you guys. Even just sticking around town and trying to go out there and have a wilderness experience, you're not guaranteed to get the peace that you want, right? You can find this in abundance in the desert. I mean, it's going to be a little crazy this weekend because of the flowers, but I guarantee you, if you walk a mile in any direction away from the roads, you're probably going to be by yourself. Space. That's one of the hallmarks of Anza Borrego Desert. You can look around. There's no development because, I mean, I guess they decided nobody wants to build a huge community. I mean, they have a small community, but even there, they're limited by the amount of water that's in the ground. So if you want to go to a place where you're not going to be constantly looking at houses or freeways, you're not going to constantly hear freeways and all the different noise, all the different distractions, this is the place you're going to go. I mean, San Diego hiking, I'm not trying to bag on it, but this is a common experience. Not necessarily the boulders, but you look out, you see constant reminders that you're around civilization. On a day-to-day basis, there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, it's a great way to get out. But again, for me, it always goes back to the stress, the cortisol levels that you have. Going out to places like this, and getting away from this is an incredibly valuable thing. One of the things you're going to find about Anza Borrego, despite the fact that it looks like this big beige field of kitty litter, you're going to find a huge amount of diversity. Most of what you see is the low desert, and with the low desert, this is all part of the Colorado desert, which is actually a much smaller part of an even larger desert called the Sonoran Desert. The Colorado Desert comprises about 7 million square miles of property. Most of it is characterized by lower elevations, usually between about sea level or below sea level in the case of the Salton Sea, up to about 3,000 feet. This is where you find all of our good friends, the Cholla and the Ocotillos. This is where most of the terrain in Anza Borrego is covered. But it's not all there is. If you get up to the higher elevations, like 3,000 feet to up to, in Anza Borrego Desert State Park, I think it tops out at Rabbit, maybe like 6.5, something like that. You start finding the high desert. It's characterized by the pinyon juniper belt. That's a pinyon right there. I don't see any, maybe that's a juniper. You got some yuccas. You got like everything else in the world. This is actually one of my favorite places, Whale Peak. It's one of those places you're going to see this. Whale Peak. I threw in a lot of pictures because I figured you guys want to look at nature porn. So this is I'm giving you some examples of where you're going to find this stuff. Whale Peak is one place. This is probably the biggest and best of the pinyon juniper forests that are in Anza Borrego, aside from maybe the Santa Rosa Crest. That's from Villager Peaks. If you like to backpack, it's a great place to camp. Valley of the Moon. This is actually not part of Anza Borrego Desert. This is actually BLM land, and it's right along the border. I don't know if anyone's ever been out there before. Yeah, you guys kind of know it. Beautiful place. Looks a lot like Joshua Tree without the Joshua trees. You can end up on the wrong side of the border for sure. If you don't watch where you're going, I don't know if they.
There's no boundaries.
Yeah, it's one of the last places where there's in California you're not going to find a big huge boundary. So you're going to see a lot of these lists up here, and just before I go on, all this stuff is actually included in the pamphlet that you found on your chair. I put it all on paper because last time I did this, I put up a few lists and people were clearing out the phones and everything. So I wanted to put this up there because this is where you're going to find a lot of this stuff. I mean, all of these hikes are going to be in a foot in the field. There's directions and everything, but if you're curious about finding the high desert, that's where you're going to find a lot of it. And you'll see a bunch of different slides like this. Palm oases. Who's been to a palm oasis? Or oasis? So what's the big one, the most famous one you guys are probably all know? Palm Canyon, right? So Palm Canyon is one of about 25. Correct me on the number, ish. Palm oases, this is a kind of an interesting thing because palm trees are tropical species, right? You guys all know that you go to Florida, you're going to see palm tree. These happen because under this section, all of this land is all part of a big long fault line, and at the fault line, water will seep up to the ground, which will nourish the palms. So these are probably tropical holdovers from many, many, many millions of years ago. They linger in these areas, and we've got a number of different hikes where we can check these out. Palm Canyon, of course, is the famous one because it's kind of got a little of everything. Mountain Palm Springs is a favorite of mine because there are 6 beautiful palm groves that you can wander around. This is an easier one too. We'll get to some of the easy ones for you. Carrizo Palm is a little harder to get to. So you've got all these different hikes that you can check out that have the palm groves. Some of them easier than others, like this one is a bird fest right here. Canyons, another great place for hiking, and this is actually a great place to introduce yourself to the desert if you're unfamiliar with hiking. Many of the places in the desert, you're going to find 2 different kinds of canyons. The Badland areas, closer to the eastern side, and then on the eastern side of the Santa Rosa Mountains. They're all sedimentary rock, so you get these nice, narrow, I love this laser pointer, nice, narrow canyon walls, a lot of slot canyons, which is always really exciting. Some of the best places that I've found, Split Mountain. Have you guys ever been to Split Mountain before? No. Yeah, beautiful place. Sandstone Canyon, Calcite Mine, the Slot Canyon. Do you guys know about the Slot Canyon down there? So that's one kind. The other kind of canyon that you're going to find, these are mostly on the eastern slopes of the peninsular ranges. So the San Ysidro Mountains, the Laguna Mountains, all the other different splinter ranges that go off, like the Vallecito Mountains, the Santa Rosa Mountains. These are mostly granitic or metamorphic, and so they have a very different character. This is also where you're going to find most of the palm groves. So you have Borrego Palm Canyon, you've got Sheep Canyon, Rainbow Canyon. This is I just went there this last weekend. It's beautiful. And again, you're going to find a lot of the stuff in the guide, so I won't go too long. Who likes to peek back? Yeah, I'm looking at my friend Joel here because they're actually attempting to do the 100 peaks in San Diego. Are you guys familiar with this? 100 different peaks, and a lot of them are Bergfest like this one. This is from Sombrero Peak. So one of my favorite things to do in the desert is actually peak bagging. And the desert's gotten, I don't know how many, because there's so many that are just numbered, so many that are just benchmarks. But the named peaks, those are popular destinations like Indian Head Mountain, Mile High Mountain, which is an unofficially named mountain. I don't know if you guys know this, but there's a petition floating around to name this after Jerry. Did you guys know about this? Yeah, there's a petition floating around to name it after him. But he came up with that name. It's not an official name. This is what he came up with. And then Mine Peak. It's a lesser known peak, but the views of the Carrizo Badlands are pretty amazing. Waterfalls. Who likes a good waterfall? Everyone likes a good waterfall. Everyone always goes chasing them no matter what TLC says about it. Gross too. Yeah, I can't fly, but I'm really just a poster. Anyways, a number of different places where you can find some great waterfalls. Borrego Palm Canyon, Cougar Canyon. Not as many. Obviously, you guys know that the desert's a dry place. Most of these waterfalls occur on the eastern slopes of the San Ysidro Mountains. All of these ones except for Oriflamme. Oriflamme's on the side of the Laguna Mountains. Harder to get to. That's a real pants shredder, by the way. Wear pants of metal if you have them. Ashley talked about this a little bit. I don't know about you guys, but I'm getting really excited about this because I spent most of the time doing the field work for this when it was the worst part of the drought. And I kept on thinking, man, we're going to get the wildflowers, we're going to get them. We never got them. So I'm really hopeful that this year it's going to work out. That's a sand verbena for those who don't know. Sunrises. One thing you're going to get in abundance. By virtue of the desert facing east, you don't get great sunsets there. Sometimes you get the nice sky colors, but you don't really get to see it sink down. Sunrises is another story. You can pretty much climb to any little ridge, anywhere you are, get there before dawn, and you're going to see something like this. In fact, that's exactly what I did. This is over by Bull Canyon. Wildlife. Now, I don't have the time to go through all the different animals and critters that you're going to see up there, but this one is the popular one that everyone likes to go see. It's the peninsular bighorn sheep. What did the last count bring up? How many did?
I want to say it was like 296.
296. That's a jump, right?
So yeah, we're holding steady. Right
Holding
now.
steady. Yeah.
Not to interject into your presentation, but it's lambing season right now. Lambing season means cute little fur balls.
So it's not the thing that makes the fur balls, it's the fur balls themselves.
Right.
So when is the Marvin Gaye season?
Literally, I think it's like November, I think.
Yeah, it takes some time, right? Sorry guys.
Good references.
I had a long day at work. I'm kind of blowing off some steam here. So I'm gonna talk on this side of the room now for a little. Oh, I'm sorry. Good wildlife hikes. Just one of the tips for finding the good wildlife hikes. You want to hike wherever there might be some water. Yeah. Because that's what's going to draw them. In the desert, it's worth more than gold and diamonds combined. So any place you're going to find a regular source of water, you have a really good chance of seeing some. The best places, of course, are Howell, Borrego Palm Canyon, Indian Head, Moonlight Canyon. I don't know if you guys know this, but Agua Caliente County Park, which is not part of Enriqueta, they've actually got a herd about 20 strong, and I've seen one every single time I've been there. Indigenous culture. So when you walk around in the desert, you get away from it all. Chances are you're going to come across some kind of sign. Vallecitos north, it's the Cahuilla. This is actually a Cahuilla pictograph panel, or I'm sorry, petroglyph panel. I always get them mixed up. Don would kick my butt if you heard me say that. The petroglyphs are carved, the pictographs are drawn. This is actually on the way to Dawn's Peak. There are a number of them where you're going to see native features, and it's always exciting to come across it. But one of the important things, and I'm just sharing this because this has been a big problem for as long as people have known about this stuff. If you ever come across something that looks like it could be a native feature, which could be morteros or pottery shards, little brown pieces of smooth stuff that clearly doesn't look like it belongs there, you got to leave it where it is. Anyone know why you have to leave it where it is? Anyone want to volunteer and put themselves on the spot?
It's illegal.
It's illegal. You move it, it
loses its archaeological value.
Yes, it's telling us a story, one. So if you move it, that's a big piece of the story that you're missing. The other part of it is this is actually the cultural heritage of the people who initially lived here. And in some places in the desert, as recently as 1900, these places were inhabited, especially in a place like Rock House Valley, like the upper Rock Houses. They were living there until about 1900 before they were moved onto their reservations. So there's a good chance you're going to see it, and I know I'm probably preaching to the choir with you guys. You probably already know this, but when you see it, it's great to look but not to touch. You get a lot of human history as well. Anyone know what this is?
Ghost Mountain?
Ghost Mountain. It's the Marshall South cabin. It was Marshall South's grand experiment in desert living. Apparently there was a lot of schlepping water up and down the hill. It's about 1.5 miles or so. In the desert, there's a lot of history, and a lot of it centers on ranching, cattle herding. I'm forgetting it. I mean, Marshall South's kind of a unique case, but there's a lot of mining. A lot of places where you'll stumble upon old mines. Probably not a good idea to go into them because they're either unstable, home to a mountain lion, or full of cholla spines. Rattlesnakes, yes, thank you. The one that really attracts a lot of attention, where are you? Right here, Goat Canyon, the trestle. Everyone knows about the trestle?
Yes.
So the trestle, the Impossible Railroad, the big curved bridge that goes through the Carrizo Gorge. We don't have the route that goes on the train tracks because that's illegal. I mean, it's kind of one of my personal pet peeves is people walking on the train tracks. It's actually property of the Metropolitan Transit System, the same people who run the trolleys. So they don't want you walking on it. But there is a really excellent route that gets there. It's a little hard, but it's fun. Lack of red tape. So I know they mentioned the Mount Whitney presentation that's coming up sometime in April. You guys all know about the red tape involved in that. You have to enter yourself in the lottery. You have to sacrifice your firstborn son. I'm never hiking Whitney again because my son. You can pack your bag, hike out to a spot, and pitch your tent. You're good. That's one of my favorite things about this because every other time I think about going backpacking or camping, it's like, oh crap, I gotta fill that thing out and I gotta fax it and then I gotta wait for them to mail it to me, and they don't do that here. And in fact, with the car camping too, there are some rules with it, but if you find a flat spot that has no vegetation, it's close to the road, bring your own metal container because you can't do ground fires. You can camp there. You don't have to pay for it. It's one of my just that ability to just go. I mean, how many places can you think of where it's like that anymore, aside from maybe BLM land? So we've talked a little bit about what's there. Sorry, I need more water. I don't know. I can't decide which side of the room I like better. Who's more good looking this side? I can't stand in the middle and be, like equal opportunity because I'm blind then. I told you I was going to pick on Mount Woodson. You can't see it, but there are about 50 people behind me in this shot. The comfort zones that we have really kind of formed from the barriers that are born from fear. If you go out to the desert, like my mom always says, you're going to have to cut your own arm off. Or you're going to get dehydrated and it's going to be like one of those Bugs Bunny cartoons where he took the wrong turn at Albuquerque and there was a cattle skeleton in the desert. Those comfort zones, those things that we start to be afraid of, that's what keeps us here. And I'm not here to knock this, but we miss out on the opportunity because we get nervous, we're intimidated. I've kind of narrowed it down. I've done a lot of informal research just talking to people that I know that don't necessarily spend a lot of time in the desert but are kind of curious in it. These are the 5 common themes that I've come up with as people seem to be getting lost. As you guys know, not a ton of trails out in Anza Borrego. In fact, there are very few, and most of those trails belong either to the California Riding and Hiking Trail or the Pacific Crest Trail. And most of the Pacific Crest Trail stays away from the really interesting stuff. So if you're going to hike, you got to kind of figure out how you're going to get there. Right here, this is Sombrero Peak, and this is how you get to it. Is anyone, you're either really excited by this picture or you're going, oh crap. So I'm sitting here thinking like, okay, that looks good, maybe not that way, maybe I gotta stay from way. Oh, I'm in trouble here, so maybe I gotta, yeah. That's, I don't know if, whoops, I'm getting ahead of myself here. I'll get back to that, because there's a game I liked to play when I was a kid, it kind of comes into that, but we'll get back to that. Unfamiliar landscapes. It's not like here you can look around and you'd be like, oh, there's Mount Woodson. Okay, I can kind of orient myself. Nobody, like most people who are familiar don't know what all this stuff is. Like they don't know that's San Ysidro. They don't know that's Indian Head. They don't know that's Pinyon Ridge. That's something that comes with experience, and until you've actually had that experience, you look around and you're like, what is this? This doesn't make any sense to me. So navigation, you start to find, is one of the most crucial things. We're going to talk a little bit about this. I wish I had more time to dig into this because this is a big, big subject, and there's a lot of skills involved that I unfortunately just don't have the time to teach you. Just really quick, this program that you're looking at, it's a free website that gives you access to all the topographic maps in the United States. You can overlay all kinds of stuff like park boundaries, you can add your own GPS tracks, you can tell even here I got lost and went the wrong way. So it happens to everybody. For those who aren't familiar with the topographic maps, just a couple of the basics. They mark the peak that are named, and here's one of those ones that are just a number. That means that they surveyed that point and they ascribed the elevation to it. All of these lines represent an elevation. So this line right here, where are we? That's about 5,000 feet. The distance between this one, or I'm sorry, the elevation difference between this line and this line is about 40 feet. So this gives you an idea of how steep the slope is and where the actual landforms are. Once you understand that, and once you have a compass that can point you in the direction, so you know that this is north and that is east and that's south, you can start to figure out, okay, this little high point here is, you know, if I'm right here, I see this high point, I know that I got to go due east, and then I got to come up this way, maybe due south because this part of Whale Peak's a little rough, but then you got to go up there. This way, what do you think's going on here? Yeah, that's a possible helicopter ride right there. This is a lot nicer, right? That looks like a nice hike. Now, I know a lot of people rely on GPS. I mean, when you guys hike, what do you, who uses GPS? Like, who relies on that? Okay. Here's why I have some issues with GPS. I decided I was going to go hike Mount San Jacinto in early May, and I didn't realize what happens on top of Mount San Jacinto in early May. There's still a ton of snow. I was using a GPS track, and like in the inexperienced hiker I was at the time, I was using my phone. So I got up to Little Round Valley, because I was coming up from Marion Mountain Trail, and I'm like, this is awesome, there's snow everywhere. And that lasted for all of 30 seconds before I realized that the trail was gone. I tried to follow my GPS track, and that got me up to the right spot, but when I got back to Little Round Valley, the phone was dead. And I was basically up Chocolate Creek without a popsicle stick at that point, because I didn't know which way was what and where I was going. I basically had to figure it out the hard way. I did, but ever since then, I've basically stayed away from GPS. Now, there are some pros. There's a lot of stuff you can do. It's getting better and better and fancier all the time. You can sync it with a topo map so you know exactly where you are at all times, which is a little harder if you're just using a map. Of course, the technology will fail. Reliable units that aren't your cell phone are expensive. I don't know about you, but I kind of like those times when I don't have a big glowing rectangle in my face. I don't know how you guys feel about that. Maps and compass, it takes a lot of practice and skill, but they never run out of batteries. So I'm sorry, I don't want to sound like I'm preaching to you, but we're talking about safety. We're talking about making sure that you have the self-reliance to survive this stuff. If you can figure out how to learn, or if you can find the time to teach yourself the skills to use the map and compass, I'd recommend that as the way to go, because you may get lost sometimes, but you're always going to be able to find your way back because you're not going to run out of batteries. The packet I've got has a bunch of resources in it that are designed to kind of give you an idea of where to go. The Wilderness Basics course is a popular one. Who's done the Wilderness Basics course before? You guys, what did you guys think of it?
Excellent.
Good? Good. So what did you learn there? Anyone can shout it out.
Secret.
Secret knowledge? Oh, is this Illuminati?
Secret.
All right. Okay. So the Wilderness Basics course doesn't want me to let you know what the secrets are. Secret, it's how to navigate. So that's a good place to do it. The trouble with the Wilderness Basics course, first of all, it's a 10-week class. They teach you a lot of these skills on paper, and then they take you out to the desert to learn how to apply them practically. There's your secret. It fills up fast. It's a very popular thing. So if you are interested in doing it, you want to try to jump on it as fast as you can, because the spaces will fill up. There's some other places like REI. I'm sorry, John. REI has some navigation. Do you guys ever do nav classes? I looked, but I didn't see anything. You used to?
You didn't really need to start.
Let me know if you want to do it. I love this stuff. San Diego School of Survival, that's actually a friend of mine who runs that. And then San Diego Orienteering, they also run some classes, but it's a lot more informal. So these are places where you can learn these skills. And of course, the devices, I mean, you can pick them up here, you can pick them up at REI, and you can use them that way. It helps. It helps to have them. It's a nice breadcrumb. It's, you can follow it back to your car, but always a little nervous when I'm relying on something with batteries. Now, not everything is going to be walking up some crazy cactus-infested slope to God knows where. There are actually quite a bit more trails and roads than you think. And here are a number of routes that are either trail, these are all trails, or roads. Where's a good road one? Oh, Arroyo Tapiado, that's all. Are a little hard to get to, like Lower Willows, for example. Calcite Mine's right off the freeway, so you can go up there, you can check out a slot canyon. It's right there. It's really easy to get to. So I put this up here because one of the big barriers is, like, I don't think I'm going to be able to figure out where I'm going, but there's so much stuff where you can actually do that. The other thing is that canyons, washes, and bridges. Those are great places. Great places to go where you don't necessarily have to worry about a lot of navigation stuff. Most canyons, it's a very clearly defined path. You just keep going that way. Try not to make a left turn. Try not to make a right turn. You're gonna be okay. So I put up some routes that have some easy navigation. Again, this is all in the pamphlet because I kind of break it down according to. I tried to break this down for you guys so that when you're looking at it, where do I want to go? What is the comfort zone? You're able to look and say, okay, I know that the navigation is going to be easy, but I'd really like to get my ass kicked. So you can try Village of Peace. Where you can say, navigation is easy and I'm looking for a nice easy time, so I'm going to go for it. Right? That's kind of what I'm trying to do, to break it down so that it's not as, like, what is all this stuff? My favorites. Who's ever had an experience with one of these guys? I love that sound. Whoever played this game when you were a kid? That's what it's kind of like when you're out there, like Choya, agave. Okay, that's a yuck. I'm not going there. It can be like that. It's not always like that though. We'll get to that in a second. But Choya, that's public enemy number one. What happens with Choya? These pods, their way of reproducing, these pods snap off and they litter the ground all around the place. You can walk by, the slightest brush will attach it to your shoe, and then as you're kind of walking along, it goes flying off right into the back of your, like right into your. Yeah, that's why they call them jumping trays, because they seem to latch on you and who knows where. I love how the EMTs are just like that out of your arm. The best way to deal with this is you take the comb, pop them off, you take the pliers, and you have to pull each individual needle out. Each individual needle, it's like a fish hook that latches. I'm getting you guys so psyched about that. It latches into your skin, and you can't use tweezers because it doesn't have enough grip, right? It's just going to keep on slipping off, and it's going to start hurting more and more. Yank it out with the pliers. Get it over with. Of course, the best way to deal with it. This is actually a really wonderful thing, and it sounds like, oh God, really? I have to dodge Troya cactus all the time. Again, this is where the therapist part of me comes out. Who's familiar with the concept of mindfulness? Some of you guys are. Most of you guys are. Most of the time when we're going about our day, we're thinking about a billion different things that aren't happening here. We're thinking about what's going to happen tomorrow. We're thinking about the BLT that we're going to get at the Red O. That's me a lot of the time. We're thinking about God knows what. We're not thinking about what's actually happening right now. If you try that here, you're in big trouble. So the desert has a funny way of forcing mindfulness on you. And the benefit of having that mindfulness is that you stop thinking about all the other things that are happening. That's actually your best defense against these guys. This guy was just trying to get his golf ball out. That's why golf, this is what Mark Twain was talking about when he said that golf was a good walk. John, I know you're friends with Agave. You guys are good buddies. Agave, aside from being a wicked-looking devil beast, it's got a little toxin at the end that even if you get a nice little prick, that feels like you got hit by a sledgehammer for about 3 days. Right? Has anyone ever had that before? Oh, it's wonderful. I'm a bit of a masochist. There's a little masochism that goes with this. Ocotillo is easy to dodge because it's a really tall plant. It's up to the ceiling, in a lot of cases sometimes taller. The problem with Ocotillo is that every once in a while, if you're not looking around, one comes by your shoulder and scratches you right there. Catclaw and mesquite. Who knows about wait a minute? Yeah, wait a minute. Hold on. You're walking by and the plant just kind of tugs at you. That's catclaw. It's really common in the washes. Some of the slopes, mostly the washes though, because it does have more dependence on water. It's actually a deciduous member of the pea family, believe it or not. Mesquite's a similar one. It's also by water sources, and it's got these lovely little thorns. Of course, it's really popular with these little guys. They're called pinnipeplas, and they like to hang out wherever there's desert mistletoe. So some nice benefits to it too. Yucca, that's a higher elevation plant. I got a good yucca one time that bayoneted my foot up on Rabbit Peak. That felt great coming down. Chaparral, the higher elevations have a lot of chaparral. We like to call this a pant shredder. Trying to make it through this way, you got to come back to A16 and buy some new pants. Steep terrain. This is Sunset Mountain. I know, Ashley, you're going to be doing this one. Aren't you excited? It's going to be so much fun. This is a hard hike. So you have the steep terrain, which I know puts a lot of people off. You have rocky terrain. This is Granite Mountain. Yes, we really did do this one. So, Granite Mountain, trying to negotiate through all of these boulders. And this is one of my favorites. This is Dawn's Peak. I don't know if you remember me mentioning that there was a 3,000-foot gain in 1 mile. Well, that's it right there. That's what that looks like. Now, again, I'm getting you guys super pumped. The good news is that they're not all like this. So if you want to go out there, but you don't want to try to climb up Dawn's Peak, which I don't recommend to anybody but the experts, by the way. I had a hard time walking for almost 5 days after that. So these are all hikes that you can attempt that aren't going to put you through a torture session. It's not going to be medieval on you. It's just going to be nice and smooth. You get a chance through these hikes. There are going to be a few little obstacles. There are going to be some rocky spots, maybe a touch of navigation, maybe like a little bit of climbing in some of these places. But this is a great place to actually get comfortable, right? The biggest part of this is just getting comfortable and not feeling like you're scared out of your wits because you're attempting to climb Sunset Mountain, right? Inaccessibility. This is another big one because a lot of people feel that in order to get to any of these hikes, they need to be driving a Hummer. Now, there are a lot of hikes. This right here, this is Rockhouse Canyon Road. This is notorious for being probably the second worst stretch of road after maybe the Lower Willows Bypass. This is actually a road, believe it or not. Yeah, I mean, it doesn't look like it, but it is. I know some people look at this and they get really excited, but for most of us, we're probably like, yeah, we're not doing that one. Now, this one probably may be out of your reach unless you like extra walking, which is kind of how I did it. I'll show you my all-terrain vehicle. It's really impressive. There's a lot of four-wheel drive roads. Again, the good news is that it's not all like that. This is the car that I used to do most of the field work for Afoot in the field. It's got these huge studded tires. It's lifted. It's got a nice roll bar, a nice spare tire, some pirate flag up on top. I did most of it. I had some help. There are a few that I had to get. I mean, there are just a few that you needed. But I hear a lot of people saying, well, I don't want to go out there because I don't know if I can even get to the trailhead. So I put together a list of all the different hikes that are highway adjacent. You can just pull up to the road. You can do it in your Prius. You can do it in your smart car. These are all hikes that you can get to just by pulling up on the road. If you don't mind a little bit of dirt, these are all hikes that you can follow that have this nice smooth dirt road. Pretty much accessible. There are a couple. I put an asterisk by Arroyo Tapiato because there's sometimes where that one gets a little iffy. But almost all of these you can get there in all of these you can get there in a two-wheel drive passenger car. In fact, I've seen Ashley.
Before you do that, though, we do recommend that you call the visitor center and say, "Hey, what's the road like?" Because some of these they have washed out recently, and the
Good
reason
point.
you get torrential rain, especially in August, it will wash out the road. So especially in the beginning of the season, call the visitor center and they'll be able to tell you what the roads are like. But for the most part, Scott's absolutely right.
Yeah, no, thank you. That's a good point, and I forgot to mention that, is that the visitor center, which is the first number that you're going to find on the pamphlet that I made for you guys, they're the ones you want to call when you're preparing. We're not quite at the preparing part, but that is a crucial step, because they're going to tell you, they know better than me, because once my book goes on the shelves, it's out of date already, because everything changes all the time out there. So calling the visitor centers first. But again, I got to all of these guys with my Civic. Isolation. Who here is worried about going to the desert and having something happen to you? Yeah, I mean, I did all this stuff, almost all of the, no, okay. I'll say I did about 70% of the field work for this book by myself. Which is either, like, I'm either brave or a complete idiot. And I'm not even, like, I don't even want to be funny about this because I know there was a recent incident where they did have to recover a body. I don't know if you guys heard about this. I don't know what the circumstances were. I actually know some of the folks that found him. He apparently had been up there for a long time because it was too difficult to get to. So, not something to mess around with. And I know that people take it seriously because this is one of the biggest things that stops people from getting out there. There's no reception in most places. And some people may think that that's a good thing, right? I'll give you a second to read that because I like this. Again, it's your chance to get away from stuff like this, which is both a blessing and a curse because, I mean, right, I don't want to get into all this stuff, but I mean, the phone, being tethered to that all the time. The other problem with it is that you can't call for help right away. There are some things that you can use, like a locator beacon. I don't know if anybody carries these. What these are designed to do, aside from being a GPS device, these will beam your location to a satellite system that will actually broadcast your signal to the people that you give it to. So Spot device, for example, will send it to a website that your loved ones can track. I remember my wife watched me hike across the Sierras by myself, and she knew that if it was the middle of the day and I stopped for longer than 3 hours, then that's when she needed to call somebody. InReach has actually got even more features because you can actually communicate with people. So if you get into trouble, you can send a message saying something specific, whereas Spot, you have to pre-program your messages. You basically get 3 options, which is, I'm moving, I'm taking a break, I'm in big trouble. Those are your 3 options, whereas InReach, you can actually send more messages. So if you're someone like me and you just like to go out on your own and just, oh, that ridge looks good, you can find that. These are great to have because this will actually tell other people where you are. The biggest defense against having something happening to you is the preparation. Researching your route in advance so that you know what you're getting into. You know what the terrain's going to be like. I mean, this is a big deal for me because I want people to go out and do this. I want people to have these experiences. I actually put my email on there, so if you're ever thinking about going to a place and you've got questions, please get in touch with me because I'll help you prepare for these things. I want people to go out there. That's why I do these presentations. This is the biggest one, leaving an itinerary with a ranger and a dog one. I've already cracked a few jokes about the guy who had to cut his own arm off, but we all know why he ended up having to do that, right? Yeah. Nobody knew where he was. Nobody knew where to look for him. I'm sorry?
And he was alone.
And he was alone, so it was a perfect storm, right? He was alone. He didn't have a friend to go and tell him, like, hey, you know, this guy's in trouble, we need a rescue. If it's out of your skill set, but I kind of have a bias with this because I've done most of my hiking alone, and I learned a long time ago that if I waited for other people, I wasn't going to do a lot of it. So, again, whether that's a smart thing or whether it's not, I'm not here to debate that. But if it's out of your skill set, if it's not comfortable, don't do it. And I know a lot of people won't do it. A lot of people go into groups and they're going to get that. The 10 essentials, things that you should always have with you at all times. A lot of these are pretty obvious. I would add the pliers, definitely the pliers. That's an essential in the desert, so I'd say there are 11. Groups. If you're worried about going alone, the good news is that there are actually a ton of different groups that you can go with. They do everything from the really easy stuff to the really hard stuff. In fact, ABF right now, they're doing the Mike's Hikes for their 50th anniversary. That's a guy named Mike Puzo, who's a real beast from what I heard. I still haven't met him. But they've done, what'd you guys do this year? You did?
We did Whale Peak, and then we did Indian Head. We had to cancel Villager due to weather, but we were planning on doing Villager. We just did Sombrero on Saturday, and on March 25th we're doing Sunset.
Okay, so you get this nice opportunity through all these different groups, where there are all these different opportunities if you don't want to be by yourself. ABF, I am biased. I know I'm doing the presentation for them. Ashley is not paying me to say this, but I've been leading hikes for them for almost, what, 3-4 years now? 3. Yeah, 3 years now. They've been super awesome to me, so I'm a very big fan of what they do. They are the official park partner. They help Anza Borrego grow, which is incredible at a time when a lot of parks are having a hard time finding new land. They're continuing to add more land onto Anza Borrego. Another one that's out there is AVNA. Big long name. Anza Borrego Desert Natural History Association. They also lead guided hikes and do a lot of educational, informational outreach stuff. And that, they have the Canyoneers. I'm sure many of you are familiar with the Canyoneers because they just put out a great hiking guide. It's the Coast to Crest. In addition to doing the hiking, I'm sorry? Cactus, thank you, sorry about that. Cactus to Crest. I'm not doing that because I'm in the competition. I just, Cactus to Coast to Cactus, right? Coast to Cactus. So the Canyoneers are the folks behind that. They also lead a lot of hikes. Some of them are more on the moderate side. These are the ones that I'm a lot more familiar with because I spend probably too much time on Facebook trying to chat with other hikers and get to know them. Meetups are great places. This is actually one that I'm doing. Unfortunately, it's already closed, but I'm doing Villager Peak just for fun. But you're going to find a lot of different ones. Hike Mania does a lot. Hike Together does a lot. The San Jacinto Mountain hiking group, they do some of the really hard stuff like Dawn's Peak, Rabbit Peak. Also, there's a bunch of different Facebook groups. If you're into Facebook, you can find the San Diego Adventure Club. Right now, there's some folks that are trying to do the 100 Peaks Challenge. So if you're looking to connect with people, those are good places to go. Yes, that's the goat from the Canyon Trestle right there. Who's been there before? You guys seen it? Don't tell me if you want the legal way review. I used to have big issues with that. I used to have a real hard time with people walking on the tracks. I won't launch into why, but this is the route from Mortero Palms, which is a really incredible experience. This is just a very dramatic way to see it. Basically what I'm going to spell out, this is how you get into this. This is what I did. This is what almost everybody I know has done when they've developed a relationship with the desert. You start small. You build a relationship with it. It's just like meeting, it's almost like meeting sort of a prickly, cranky introvert. Anybody know anybody like that? Like the sort of person that, like, you suspect they've got a heart of gold, but you really don't know how to talk to them right away. You're kind of, you seem like a good person, but it's kind of tough, right? They make you work for it a little bit. It's the same with the desert. You kind of have to come to it with an attitude like, okay, I'm going to play by your rules a little bit. I'm going to start small. I'm not going to try too much right away. For me, again, I'm a bit of an idiot, and that's why I did Whale Peak first. But then I got smart, and I was like, okay, I'm going to do Mountain Palm Springs. I'm going to do the Mud Holes Wash hike. I'm going to try Cool Canyon. I'm going to try some of the ones that don't scare the bejesus out of me. And as I went along and did it, I started to realize, oh, okay, so dry falls, you know, that's actually a lot of fun. It's not as scary as I think. I just have to be really careful. Don't step on that rock because that's the slippery one. Step on this rock, and then don't try to go straight up, but you can usually work around. You start to get those experiences the more time you spend out there. When you start with the easy stuff, conquer all these little challenges, and you start to build up more confidence. You start to figure out, like, oh, God, if I just walk down the wash, that peak looks cool. Maybe I can actually try to climb up to it and make my way back. And I didn't get lost because I actually know which way I went. This makes sense. It's not, I don't have to rely on a trail. It doesn't have to be laid out in front of me all the time. Then you start to build the skills. I know that guy. He's a cool guy. You start to build the skills and you find out, like, oh man, I got my eyes on that one mountain up there. This is actually Granite Mountain. Why am I forgetting? Granite Mountain, this is the east approach up from Cool Canyon. You start to see these guys the more time you spend out there. You look up and you're like, man, that mountain, I wonder what's up on top of that. And then you start working your way up and, oh, maybe I'm going to try that one time. Then you try it and you realize, wow, I can do this. This was hard. I couldn't walk for a couple of days, and I did the waddle walk for a little while, and, you know, I had a couple of spines that I had to pull out, but that was actually pretty cool. So the masochism thing, right? Actually, that's a nice hurt fest. That actually kind of wraps up the presentation. Again, this is Mine Peak. This is the. I was so lucky to do this, you guys. I found a place. I wanted to check this peak out. I'm like, I'm gonna go see what it looks like at sunrise. And you go out there enough and you get these warnings. Like here's the cloud deck, and it just kind of cut off the sun. So you just keep going out there, keep exploring, push yourself a little bit each time. Try something a little different each time you go out there. You do it enough, and you're gonna have all these incredible experiences. You're gonna see sunrises like you wouldn't believe. Hopefully, we're gonna get a pretty epic wildflower season. We got all of our fingers and toes crossed. And that pretty much sums it up for what I've got to say about this. I figured probably got some time if anybody has any questions and they want to learn about something specific. Now's the time. Yes?
In the upcoming book, did you add some desert hikes and take any out?
Not as many as I would have liked. The adding part, there's a limited window for the desert, and just doing what I had to do already was pretty intense, and I was still working full time, so there were about 10 different routes that I wanted to put in there that I just didn't have the time to get to. I added, I think, 4 or 5, so not as much as I would have liked. I did take some out. A couple of them came out at the request of Anza Borrego Desert State Park. Apparently people were trying the hike and they were underestimating their needs and they were having to make rescues. So because I want Anza Borrego to be my friend, I listened to them and I took them out. But again, with this, I tried to take as little out as possible. If I took something out, it was either because they wanted me to, somebody said this is a really bad idea to keep this route, or it was because the hike was a wreck when I did it. It was just like, this isn't working. So I think with Anza Borrego, I think there were only 3 that I took out. So it was like a net neutral. Anyone else have questions?
So what's like the month buffer in terms of like, you know, when the heat comes in and like, you know, comfortable weather for, you know, new hikers who want to hike the desert?
So October's hit and miss for the starting time. I've been there in October and it's been 70, 65 degrees and it's super comfortable and I'm happy as can be, and I've been there and it's been really fun. On the other side of it, I'd say April's the buffer month where you can get it either way. Sometimes you'll get lucky enough where it'll extend into early May and you'll have a little bit of time. It sort of changes if you're talking about the higher elevations. So for something like Hope Valley or Pinion Ridge or even Heath, you might get away with it into May and maybe a little earlier in October. But I mean, really, it's so hit or miss in those seasons. The best times are November, December, and January because those typically are the coldest times. February and March, I've had 90, 95 degree days on some occasions. It's been getting hotter. Right? Every year seems to be a little bit hotter, and spring seems to come a little bit earlier. So to play it safe and to just be really careful, I say the best times are November, December.
Plus, you'll love the heat in June,
I'm trying to get people to, like, it's the gateway drug hike for everybody because, well, and it's for good reason. You get water, you get waterfall, you like a small waterfall, you get a palm grove. That's probably one of the best chances you're going to have of seeing a bighorn sheep. And I know for any kid to get excited about the desert, seeing a ram is probably the best way. If you're really adventurous, you can even continue a little bit past the palm grove. It gets more and more interesting. That one's really good. On the south side, I would recommend Mountain Palm Springs. For similar reasons, there's a lot of palm groves, which tends to attract a lot of wildlife. Relatively easy terrain. It's like the sort of thing that's like a high reward for a road and all that. Those two. Mountain Palm Springs and River Palm. Anybody else? I know the meaning of life, you guys. Come on. Okay. Well, I want to thank you very much. It's been great.